In April 2022, Rudy Wetzel vanished from his father's YouTube empire without warning. Matt's off-road recovery was sitting at nearly 900,000 subscribers, pulling in somewhere between $400,000 and $760,000 annually. And Rudy was the star everyone loved. He was the eldest son, the talented fabricator, the guy who could weld anything and drive through impossible terrain like it was nothing. Fans assumed he'd take over the business someday. Then one day, he was just gone. No dramatic goodbye video, no explanation, just silence. People started asking questions. What happened between father and son? Was there a falling out? The real reason would shock everyone. When Rudy came back from his LDS mission in late 2020, he stepped right into his father's booming operation. Matt's off-road recovery wasn't just a towing company anymore, it was a full-blown media empire. Millions of people tuned in every week to watch the crew pull stranded vehicles out of the brutal Utah wilderness. Rudy seemed like he had it made. He was working alongside his dad, gaining fame, building his reputation as one of the best fabricators in the off-road community. The Rudicon, his legendary brown Jeep XJ, became almost as famous as his father's Banana. But behind the camera, a different story was unfolding. The tight filming schedule that made Matt's channel so successful was slowly suffocating Rudy's own dreams. Every recovery had to be filmed. Every project had to fit into the content calendar. Every modification had to serve the channel's narrative. Rudy wasn't just a fabricator anymore. He was a character in someone else's show. The work that should have been creative and fulfilling started feeling like a job he never asked for. He couldn't experiment with builds he actually cared about. He couldn't take his time perfecting details. Everything moved at the speed of content creation, and Rudy was losing himself in the process. Matt Wetzel had built something incredible. From a roofing contractor to a YouTube sensation, his story was the American dream. The channel was generating massive revenue, the merchandise was flying off the shelves, and the subscriber count kept climbing. Everyone in the off-road community knew Matt's name, and because Rudy was his eldest son from a previous marriage, people naturally assumed he'd be the heir to this empire. The expectations were crushing. Rudy grew up watching his father grind, but this wasn't his vision. He didn't wake up every morning dreaming about pulling stuck Jeeps out of sand dunes. That was Matt's passion, not his. Rudy's heart was in fabrication, building things from scratch, taking on creative challenges, working with metal and machinery in ways that had nothing to do with recovery operations. But when you're the boss's son on a channel with nearly 1 million subscribers, nobody asks what you want. They assume you want what your father built. The pressure to continue the legacy weighed on him. Every time someone called him Matt's son, instead of recognizing his own skills, it stung a little more. Rudy was talented enough to stand on his own, but he'd never get that chance while working in his father's shadow. The question wasn't whether he could succeed, it was whether he'd ever get the opportunity to try. Everything came to a head when Rudy sat down for an interview with the YouTube channel Decent Garage. For the first time, he opened up about what really happened. He explained that the constant deadlines and rigid filming schedule left absolutely zero room for personal growth. Matt's channel operated like a machine. Every week demanded new content, new recoveries, new drama to keep viewers engaged. And Rudy was expected to keep up. But here's what got to him most. He couldn't tell his own story. Everything he built, every skill he demonstrated, every project he touched became part of Matt's narrative. The channel was called Matt's Off-Road Recovery, not Rudy's. When fans praised a particularly difficult fabrication job, the comments section celebrated Matt's team, not Rudy specifically. He was doing the work, but not getting the recognition. Worse, he wasn't gaining the experience he actually wanted, the kind that came from handling struggles off camera, making mistakes in private, and learning at his own pace. Rudy wanted to work on custom builds, hot rods, rock crawlers, and passion projects that had nothing to do with towing. He wanted to take on challenges that scared him, projects that might fail, experiments that wouldn't make good YouTube content. But under his father's schedule, there was no time for any of that. It was recovery after recovery, video after video, and Rudy felt trapped doing work that didn't fulfill him. Right around the time Rudy was planning his exit, something else was happening behind the scenes that most fans didn't know about. In December 2021, Matt Wetzel was formally charged with insurance fraud. Investigators from the Utah Insurance Fraud Division discovered that Matt's company, Winder Towing, had submitted over $15,000 in false claims to ALA. The problem? ALA doesn't cover off-road vehicle recoveries, but Matt had been billing them anyway. The details were damning. In one case, a customer used a friend's ALA membership to pay for recovering a Polaris RZR, then claimed it was actually a truck that got towed. In another instance, Matt allegedly told a customer to sign up for ALA, wait a few days, then submit a claim for a recovery that had already happened. There was even a situation where Matt delivered construction materials to someone and they paid him by submitting fraudulent .A claims totaling $2,800. When investigators confronted him, Matt admitted the claims were wrong on the front end but fair on the back. By 2022, Matt pleaded no contest to a Class A misdemeanor. He was sentenced to 18 months of probation and ordered to pay back $1,328 to RLA plus an additional $1,745 fine. For a channel built on helping people in distress, this was a brutal blow to the reputation, and Rudy was watching all of this unfold while trying to decide his own future. In April 2022, Rudy finally made his move. He walked away from the empire, the subscriber count, the guaranteed income, and the fame. He launched Rudy's Adventure and Design, known as RAD, and for the first time in years, he was working on his own terms. No filming schedule, no content deadlines, no expectations to be anyone other than himself. He landed a job welding underground safes for underground storage solutions, and his boss, a longtime friend, let him use the shop space and tools for his own projects after hours. This was exactly what Rudy had been dreaming about. He started his own YouTube channel to document the builds he actually cared about. The Rudicon, his famous Jeep XJ, got the upgrades he'd been wanting to do for years. He began working on a 1973 Chevy C10 drift car with air suspension. He took on the wild challenge of turning a 2002 Mini Cooper into a rock crawler. He even started planning an Ultra 4 race truck build, something that had nothing to do with recovering stuck vehicles and everything to do with pushing boundaries. Around the same time, Rudy started dating his girlfriend Janelle, and life outside of his father's business started taking shape. He wasn't just Matt's son anymore. He was Rudy Wetzel, fabricator and builder, carving out his own space in the off-road community. The freedom was intoxicating, but it came with risks. Starting over meant smaller paychecks, fewer viewers, and uncertainty. But for Rudy, that was better than staying trapped. Walking into Rudy's shop today, you'd see a completely different vibe than Matt's operation. Where Matt's focus was always on recovery vehicles and tow rigs, Rudy's shop looks like a playground for automotive creativity. There are hot rods sitting next to low riders. Desert racers in various stages of completion share space with rock crawlers that look like they're built for another planet. Every project tells a story of experimentation and passion, not content deadlines. The Rudicon remains his signature build. That brown Jeep XJ started as a stock vehicle, but evolved into a legend. Rudy modified it with 1-ton axles, super low gearing, and a Yukon locker that made it capable of pulling vehicles twice its weight through impossible terrain. But now, without the pressure to use it for content, Rudy's upgrading it even further, fine-tuning suspension, experimenting with different gear ratios, and pushing the limits of what an XJ can do. Then there's the 1973 Chevy C10 drift car, a project that would have never fit on Matt's channel. Rudy's building it on air suspension, which means he can drop it low for car shows and raise it up for driving. It's the kind of build that requires patience, precision, and a willingness to fail multiple times before getting it right. The Mini Cooper rock crawler is even more insane, taking a tiny street car and transforming it into something that can tackle rock trails. These projects aren't about views or sponsors, they're about Rudy proving to himself that he can create something unique. When Rudy left, the rumor mill went into overdrive. Some fans were convinced that Lizzie, one of Matt's most popular employees, had something to do with it. There were whispers that Rudy and Lizzie had chemistry on camera, And when Rudy disappeared, people assumed there was drama. Others speculated about financial disputes between father and son, imagining heated arguments over money and ownership. The conspiracy theories got wild. Some even suggested Rudy was pushed out because of Matt's legal troubles. But the truth was far simpler and way more relatable. Rudy didn't leave because of a fight. He didn't leave because of money. He left because he needed to find his own path. Matt wasn't a villain in this story. He was a father who had built something incredible and naturally assumed his son would want to be part of it. And Rudy wasn't ungrateful or bitter. He was just a young man who realized he wanted something different from life. The most telling sign that there was no bad blood. Rudy and Matt still collaborate occasionally. Rudy shows up at major off-road events like King of the Hammers, Easter Jeep Safari, and the Off-Road Wrecker Games, often working alongside the MORR team. Matt has publicly stated multiple times that he fully supports Rudy's decision. In one video, Matt made it clear that Rudy left on the best possible terms and that the door is always open. This wasn't a family falling apart, it was a son growing up. Today, Rudy Wetzel runs his shop in Hurricane, Utah, and welcomes fans Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. He's building the wildest projects in the off-road community, competing at major events, and slowly growing his own YouTube channel on his own timeline. He's not chasing his father's subscriber count or trying to replicate Matt's success. He's defining success on his own terms, one custom build at a time. His girlfriend Janelle supports his work, his boss gives him space to create, and the off-road community respects what he's building. Sometimes the hardest decision isn't staying and fighting, it's walking away from something good to find something great. Rudy could have stayed comfortable, collected a paycheck, and remained a character in his father's story forever. Instead, he took the risk of starting over, knowing he might fail, knowing people would question his decision, knowing he'd have to prove himself all over again. That takes guts. Matt built an empire, but Rudy's building something even more valuable, a life that actually belongs to him. And in the end, that's what mattered most.